Welcome back to Treasures from the Purans, a treasure chest of fascinating stories from the Puran genre of Indian literature. The curated stories in this series are from Srimad Devi Bhagavatam, which I have adapted for this podcast. I'm Valentina Trivedi, bringing you treasures from the Purans. Srimad Bhagavatam Punyam Nanakhyan Kavanvitam Dvepayana Mukhodbhutam Panchalakshana Sanyutam Shrinvatam Sarva Papagnam Shubhadam Sukhadam Tatha Itihasamidam Punyam Kirtitam Muni Sattamaha. Anybody who hears this Srimad Bhagavatam, endowed with 5 characteristics and filled with various anecdotes that came out of the mouth of Vyasa, finds all his sins destroyed and attains peace and blessedness. O Munis, this holy history has thus been described to you. The last episode ended with King Janmejaya requesting Muni Ved Vyas to tell him about the Devi's glory. Replying to King Janmejaya, Muni Ved Vyas said, I will tell you about the most glorious deeds of the Devi. In olden times, King Dhruv Sandhi ruled in the kingdom of Kaushal. He was a truthful and benevolent king and performed his regal duties from the flourishing city of Ayodhya. He had 2 lovely and intelligent wives named Manorama and Leelavati. A son was born to Manorama and was named Sudarshan. The king was overjoyed and celebrated the birth of the prince by giving away gifts and riches. A month later, Leelavati too gave birth to a son who was named Shatrujit. The king loved his sons and delighted in seeing them growing up and learning all that princes should. In time, he, as well as his ministers, became more fond of the younger prince, Shatrujit, as he had a sweet and persuasive way of talking and could easily win people over by his speech. One day, King Dhruv Sandhi went on a hunting expedition where he killed numerous animals like deer, elephants, boars, hares, wild buffaloes, and rhinoceroses. While he was in the jungle, a lion suddenly emerged from a bush and leapt on the king. Armed with his sword and shield, the king stood his ground courageously. With a loud roar, the fierce beast fell upon the king, even as his followers shot arrows at the animal. But before their horrified eyes, the lion ripped open the king's abdomen before falling dead himself. The king was dead. His soldiers hurried back to the palace to convey this shocking news. After the king had been cremated and all the ceremonies were over, the ministers and advisors to the king decided that Sudarshan, as the older prince, should ascend the throne, even though he was still underage. On hearing this, Yuddhjit, the king of Ujjain and Leelavati's father, hastened to Ayodhya to stake claim for his grandson Shatrujit to be crowned king. Meanwhile, Manorama's father Veersen, the ruler of Kalinga, had also arrived to be present for his grandson's coronation. The 2 kings, accompanied by their respective armies, began to argue with the ministers about who should be crowned. Veersen said, since it's customary for the eldest to be crowned, there should be no debate about crowning Sudarshan. Moreover, Sudarshan had all the qualities of a good ruler. Yuddhjit, on the other hand, insisted that Shatrujit should be crowned king, as he was definitely more popular with everyone and certainly didn't lack any regal qualities. A quarrel ensued, with Yuddhjit accusing the ministers of being greedy and selfish and wanting to make Sudarshan the king, even though Shatrujit was more qualified. He ended by saying, "I am ready to fight for it." Meanwhile, numerous rulers of smaller principalities, wanting the two kings to fight, had started gathering with their forces. Hearing about the impending battle, robbers from adjoining kingdoms had also started arriving. With tensions rising rapidly, the two kings, driven by greed and anger, faced each other to battle for their grandchild's rights. As arrows flew from both sides, a dreadful battle ensued between the infantries, the cavalries, and the warriors atop elephants. The devatas and the humans watched on in astonishment as bodies fell and the blood of elephants, horses, and warriors started flowing, rapidly becoming a torrent like the bloody river Vaitarni, which leads to hell. Vultures and crows started flying overhead to feast on the dead. The dust rising from the dreadful clashes of soldiers rose up in the air, blocking the sun and darkening the sky before absorbing the blood and falling to the ground. In the heat of the battle, Yuddhjit's arrow found its mark and severed Veersen's head from his body. Seeing Veersen killed, his soldiers started fleeing the battlefield. When news of her father's death reached Manorama, she was stricken with grief and terror. With her husband dead, her father slain in battle, and her son a minor, she was sure that Yuddhjit would come to slay her son. She was astute enough to know that in this changed situation, all the ministers and courtiers too would side with Yuddhjit. It had suddenly become too dangerous to stay in the city. She thought hard and then called Vidalla, the most trusted of the ministers. Expressing her concern, she sought his advice. Vidalla said, "O Queen, you and the prince are definitely not safe here anymore. Let us escape into the forest near Benares. My uncle Subahu is the ruler there. He has a powerful army and will definitely protect us." Vidalla and Manorama, along with Sudarshan and an attendant, left in Vidalla's chariot on the pretext of meeting Yuddhjit. Grieving for her father, Manorama performed his cremation and got to the banks of the Ganga after a 2-day journey. But robbers in the area stole the chariot and whatever was in it, leaving them standing by the roadside. Manorama, accompanied by Vidalla, the attendant, and her son, went to the Chitrakoot mountain, where she arrived at the hermitage of Rishi Bharadwaj. Rishi Bharadwaj asked her who she was and why she had come there. Unable to speak, Manorama burst into tears. Vidalla told the Rishi the whole story of the queen's distressed state and requested him to give shelter and protection to Queen Manorama and the prince. Rishi Bharadwaj now addressed Manorama gently. "O Queen," he said, "you can remain in my hermitage for as long as you like, without any fear. Take care and bring up your child, who will surely be a king someday." Thus, Manorama and Sudarshan, accompanied by Vidalla and the maid, stayed on in the hermitage. But were they truly safe from their enemy? And what did fate have in store for the prince who was growing up in a forest? To find out, wait for the next episode. कात्यायनी महामाये भवानी भुवनेश्वरी संसारसागरे मग्नम् मामुद्धर कृपामयी ब्रह्म विष्णु शिवाराध्ये प्रसीद जगदम्बिके मनो अभिलषितं देवी वरं देहि नमोऽस्तुते।